Thanks for joining us. And today we're going to talk about practice your Kriya Yoga. So students are often very much interested in understanding what they're doing in Kriya Yoga. And part of the reason for the way that I teach, at least with the public videos, is to explain some of the dynamics that are happening when one is having experiences in Kriya. In particular, what is happening with the techniques of Kriya. So Kriya Pranayama, as you may know, is the most prevalent or the primary foundational practice in Kriya Yoga. It's a form of intentional breathing that brings us into a low idle state. And so my explanation, even right there, is talking about low idle state. We know that we get in heightened states and we get in lower idle states, right? And that is because our central nervous system, the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems, are having an effect on us. It affects our heart rate, affects our breath rate, and so on. And so when I provide explanations in this way, which brings in, neurophysiology and so on, and, the dynamics and the nervous systems and so on, these are explanations to help people understand the process of what they're experiencing. There are some students that want an explanation of more along the lines of traditional yoga explanations, things like chakras, right? The energy centers, things like the nadis, the energy channels, if you will. And, the subtle bodies, right? All of that kind of thing. And they get very interested in that. And they want to know, how are the practices affecting those subtle aspects? What is it leading to? When is the activation of my Sahasrara going to happen? And what practice, and so on and so on. And so what they're doing, is trying to create a mental map, but it becomes sometimes too cumbersome of a mental map. What we want to do in Kriya Yoga is to practice, right? And the reason, because the Kriya Yoga practice brings results. Theorizing about Kriya Yoga does not bring results. There's a famous saying that the map is not the territory, right? A map is great because it gives a representation of the territory. But the map itself does not mean that you've had an experience of actually being in that place. The map can help to orient you. If you've ever been to a new place, if you've gone, say that you want to go on somewhere vacation and you've checked out maps and read about it and all that kind of stuff, and you're like, oh, there's this and there's that, and there's the bakery down here, and then there's this beautiful beach, and so on and so on, and you talk about that, and then you get there and you kind of try and you are filled with the sensory information of the actual experience, and then you may use your mental map to kind of orient yourself and say, oh, wow, this is like more than I thought it was, more than what the map says, certainly more. And then you go and say, oh, well, let me orient myself a little bit so I have signposts along the way to know where I am. But the experience of being there is the experience of being there. And that's the same thing with Kriya Yoga. People who get very involved in the mental processes and explanations about what is happening and so on are impeding their ability to go into deeper states of meditation. And so I don't recommend that. The explanations that I provide are meant to be little signposts along the way so that people know where they are, or they know that the process is working. So for example, when we talk about pranayama inducing pratyahara, right? So the intentional breathing induces the internalization, we know it's happening because there's effects in the body, right? We start to feel the hands hot and heavy or tingling in the body, in the limbs and so on. And those are feelings of you starting to go into pratyahara, into internalization. So that's why I explain it in that way. When you're doing your Kriya Pranayama, if after 12 Kriyas, you start to feel subtle sensations of tingling, you know that your Kriya Yoga Pranayama practice is working correctly, right? And you know that you can use this signpost to fine-tune the effectiveness of your Kriya so that you're using that signpost, that map, to provide an empowerment on your actual experience. But it's the experience that matters. It's not what I said about the signpost. That doesn't matter. If I talk about chakras, that doesn't matter. Only if it's a signpost and you say, oh, whoa, he said there was something like that and I feel something like this. Okay, so it seems like I'm proceeding in the right direction in the map. Great. The map is not the territory. It is only the map, right? So the maps that I provide are meant to be simple, understandable by people in this culture, in this day and age. I don't go very much into esoteric descriptions. I only talk about chakras in the context of Kriya Yoga because that is part of the tradition, right? So using Om Japa in the chakras is part of the tradition of Kriya Yoga, so I teach it that way. But I don't get too much into it. It's only a signpost along the way. But the actual experience of the Kriya Pranayam is more important than the map, right? Because you want the actual experience, because that's what will actually bring you into meditation. You can't get there by thinking about it. You can't get there by theorizing about it. And if so, you're trying to create these esoteric descriptions, esoteric explanations about what's happening, you know, in at the karmic levels, you know, at the levels of the astral body, right? And so on and so on. It's just going to be an impediment. It's going to be more ruffle in the mind that delays you actually getting into a deeper meditative state. So that's why I don't really get into that very much. I could talk about that stuff, but I don't, because I don't find it helpful. And quite frankly, it's one person's explanatory model over another person's explanatory model. If the explanatory model, if the signpost actually reflects reality, then it's useful. And if it doesn't reflect reality and people are like, I don't know what this is this in the Sushumna or am I in the Ida and Pingala nadis, right? It's really just going to create mental confusion and impede the ability of the student to actually go right into deep meditation. That goes against, you know, what I believe in, right? So I don't provide explanations that are esoteric, right? I may refer to certain things if I find them helpful, but in general, I try to stick with what is easily understandable by most people. Tingling sensations in the hand and body are easily understandable, right? And we may use a certain phrase of that, pratyahara. And as it deepens and the body starts to disappear and you're drawn into deeper states, we can then use Patanjali's Yoga Sutras as reference to see what's going on, right? What's happening with the breath, what is happening with the sensations in the body, what is happening with the stillness of the mind or lack of stillness of the mind, right? So we can use those signposts to say, hey, this is where you are, because we know what the process is, what the trajectory is, and the quickest way to get there is to recognize those signposts that leading to the next junction, if you will. But it's not the map that defines you going deep into meditation. It is actually the process of meditation. So when people are asking me about, you know, esoteric descriptions and so on in Kriya Yoga, I tend to not discuss it. I've learned lots of that stuff, and I find some of it's useful and some of it isn't. But the explanations that I provide are meant to be practical so that they can help students to get into deeper meditation, because that's what I care about. I know that that is what is the important thing in Kriya Yoga, is having the experience. And when people ask Lahiri Baba about things, you know, students, very, you know, smart students would ask him, you know, detailed questions and so on. He would often just say, practice your Kriyas, right? So he was saying, yeah, you can think about it this way and think about it that way. But really the practice is what allows you to develop. So as another Kriya Yogi has famously said, practice your Kriya Yoga. If you have any questions about this video, feel free to send me an email at info@modernkriya.com. Also check our website at modernkriya.com and our YouTube channel. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.